we go. All right, so this presentation, again, is about the core competency, defining core competencies for food systems curriculum that Hannah and I will be sharing about today. The group you see, can you still see my screen? It's not showing up on my end, so I'm glad to hear that from Hannah's head nod. The group you see on the screen is the partners that came together through a USDA Agricultural Marketing Service cooperative agreement over the course of about 6 months. So this was a fairly quick project, starting in August of last year and ending in December. This presentation will go through several of the findings that we had, but just wanted to acknowledge these faces as we move forward, and we'll talk a little bit more about their involvement.
So we weren't quite sure how big of a crowd to anticipate. So we do have some normal Zoom etiquette, Zoom logistics announcements. I know we have different broadband connections and capacities, but we are hoping to have a lot of discussion in this session. So if possible, have your video on. It's also nice to talk to faces instead of boxes. So if possible, have video on. If not, that's totally understandable. Just as a reminder, if you want to see everybody on your screen, there's this little vertical bar where you can split the slides and people's faces. So hopefully that helps us build a little bit connection in this virtual situation. And I think this is a small enough group. If you want to just share something, verbal is okay. If you're more comfortable dropping in the chat box, we'll be monitoring that the whole time as well. Right. So just a brief agenda for today, just like this ground rules and technology intro. And then we have 3 main sections. We're going to go over the core competency project that happened last fall that Courtney just provided. And then we will step into our curriculum examples. Iowa State and NC State both offer local food curriculum, so we'll walk through those. And then this is an ongoing process. This is work that started a few years ago. This specific USDA project was the most recent step, and we are looking at how to move the project forward in the future. So we'd love to hear some input on that as well. And we'll be taking questions at the end of these 3 sections. So Courtney pulled these ground rules from Co-Creative. So again, if possible, remain on camera, but again, understanding internet capacities. Be near your microphone if you do want to speak, and mute if others are talking. It doesn't look like anybody's on their phone, but if you do have to switch over, it's *6 to mute and unmute. Avoid distractions. I know when I'm watching these presentations, I want to click on everything. I found it really helpful to hold something else in my hands that I can't click. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. Let's see. Again, we'll take verbal or chat questions because we're such a small group, just whatever you're comfortable with. And I think the other main point is just be kind to yourself and others. 2020 has been a very wild year so far, and I think we're trying virtual conferences and things are a little tense right now in the world. So just hopefully that this can be a positive part of the week.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Okay, we are going to start off the presentation now by attempting a Zoom poll. We are curious if you or your organization currently offers food systems curriculum, and this can be very broadly seen. So it could be certifications, it could be general programming, and those types of things. Great. I think I may have one other person. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Okay, so from the group on the phone right now, we do have several that are currently offering curriculum. We also have a few that aren't or are unsure. So that's helpful for Hannah and I to just know who's in the audience. As we start talking about both the core competencies and our curriculum, please feel free to share additional insights. We'll also share about a matrix that's available now for displaying your curriculum to national partners. So if that's something you're interested in, you can follow up with me afterwards regarding that. So our primary goals for this presentation are to, one, increase awareness about the USDA core competency project that has wrapped up. Also to increase knowledge of our curriculum, so Hannah's and at NC State as well as the Iowa State curriculum. We're not prioritizing those in any way, besides we happen to be the two people on this call and can share about those curriculum. Also to increase collaboration. So we're hoping that throughout this presentation, you learn about other national networks that exist, as well as each other on the line, and we can continue conversations about food systems, competencies, and curriculum moving forward, and how we can better connect and work together. So again, starting this presentation off, I'm going to give an overview of the core competency project. If this was in person, I would much prefer you to like raise your hand and interrupt me with questions. That is my style. So if something comes up, feel free to chat that in if it's an urgent thing relating to that slide, or as Hannah mentioned, we will have that option at the end of this section of the presentation to talk through things too if you want to take notes. So the overall goal for the core competency project was to understand what curriculum already existed around the nation in regards to food systems, to increase networking broadly. So we did have 30 different national partners from several different types of organizations, extension, nonprofits, Farm Bureau, public health. It ranged broadly. So it was really to try to get a holistic perspective of what is a food system and how are we engaging in this work. With that, we also wanted to create core competencies specifically for extension educators, but that could also be applied for additional partners. And these core competencies were things that we saw we being the broad team involved, saw as needed knowledge, expertise in regards to working in food systems as a practitioner. We also wanted to, again, build awareness around existing curriculum across the nation. And so the matrix that's developed tries to highlight the different types of curriculum, also the fees, how they're offered. For example, just using our Iowa State curriculum, we had an in-person workshop followed by online modules. Through COVID, we need to switch that up and it's going to be all virtual. But we were able to, through this practice, through this project research, identify which types of programs already exist and the types of education practices and activities they were using. We also then wanted to identify any gaps in the curriculum too, or in the things that were being offered currently, to either address if new programs needed to be developed, if there could be collaborations and those types of things. So that was the overall intent. This led to several different outputs that were created by project partners and the leads. So we do have a report of existing curriculum that I'll show you in a few minutes. That was developed based on a Qualtrics survey that was completed. We also have a report on the core competencies. This is used in two ways. One is there's a learning objective matrix, again, that you'll see in a little bit, as well as individuals that offer curriculum could use those learning objectives to identify which competencies they meet within their curriculum. We used an assessment survey to identify the core competencies. That was a national survey. We also had 2 in-person 2-day meetings, lots of discussion, lots of facilitation. As community development professionals, you know how that goes. So that's how we honed in from a very large perspective of what all could be included in food systems into 9 core competencies and learning objectives. We also then presented our findings to USDA in December. That has led to additional follow-up next steps and discussions with them. And we now have the final reports on our website. So on the screen now is a view of all of the partners. I will let you guys read those rather than reading them all out to you. I do want to highlight a few of the leading partners, as they had a heavier lift, if you will, in terms of making this project occur. So the North American Food Systems Network, or NAFSN, was involved. They have been doing research on food systems curriculum and certifications for a long time, and have a breadth of knowledge on the subject. They also have their own network and website and communities of practice that we relied heavily on for a history and understanding of current practices and curriculum available. E-Extension and their community of practice around food systems were also involved. They similarly have different webinars and resources for food systems practitioners within Extension. And then the Wallace Center and their Food Systems Leadership Network and several of the other aspects that they offer helped in identifying and networking and considering the core competencies. And then of course, Hannah with NC State and their colleagues were also a piece of this. And then Iowa State was the lead partner in the cooperative agreement. The partner organizations that you see on the screen are hopefully showcasing the breadth and diversity of the types of information and the expertise that was around the table. We had several that joined for all of the meetings that we had in person, and in some cases there were 2 different representatives that also kind of tag teamed in terms of who came to which meeting in terms of discussion. And I'll turn it over to you for an introduction.
All right, so Courtney and I are just going to give a brief introduction about where our local food program falls within the organization and how we work a little bit. So I'm housed at NC State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our extension service expands across 2 land-grant institutions, NCANT State University and NC State University. And then I'm housed within our Ag and Natural Resources and Community and Rural Development team. And our extension program has a very strong relationship with the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, CEFS, which is a collaboration between our state Department of Agriculture and then NCANT and NC State. It's really because of that partnership that we have the capacity that we do for doing our food systems development work across the state. So the initiative, my program is a statewide initiative designed to promote the production, marketing, and consumption of food grown and caught within North Carolina, which is very broad. We have a lot of different stakeholders, and because of the span of our land-grant institutions and CEFs, we're able to have that wide of an audience. We have agents in all of the extension areas: 4-H, community development, ag and natural resources, and family and consumer sciences, who are designated as local food coordinators, and we have a person in each 101 county offices. So we provide educational resources for all of those folks. So just to give you an idea of where I spend my time, Becky brought up our local food program team. We have about 85 specialists and agents from across the state, from both universities, who are organized into 7 different work groups who develop local food programming resources. So that I provide leadership for that with a county co-chair. So we're able to provide a lot of resources through that structure. And then later, I'll go through our online courses that we've offered for the past several years. We've had over 100 people go through what is now 3 online professional development courses. And then I also offer support for local food projects across the state and technical support for agents, mostly through taking phone calls and emails and the web portal.
Similar introduction then for Iowa State. Our unit is housed within Iowa State Extension and Outreach as well. We are on campus and support our counties and various different ways. For the Farm, Food, and Enterprise Development Unit, we are nested within Ag and Natural Resources Extension, and our FED unit has 3 different teams. We've got Business Development or Enterprise Development, Small Farms, and then our Food Systems team. Several of our food systems team members are also split positions with Community Economic Development as that works, but we, similar to Hannah, also connect really broadly between human sciences and 4-H too on programming. A little bit about the different teams. Business development and our Farm, Food, and Enterprise Development unit focuses on supporting small businesses, whether that's farms and food businesses, but they also support other types, but on like feasibility studies, financial considerations, market research, and other types of things. A podcast has become a super promising and important aspect that they're also using now in COVID. The podcasts have been out of this world in terms of the number being supported there. Small Farms team also hosts the Agricultural Marketing Research Center. If you have not heard of this resource, it's a great place to find curriculum, information on commodities and products. This is a federally funded and supported project. The Small Farms team also supports agritourism, our Central Region SARE, and additional technical assistance for small farm support. Similarly, for this team, podcasts and webinars on how to think about transitioning to virtual sales or processing, and those aspects that have been really challenging in COVID have become pretty critical. Our food systems team then focuses on farm to school work. We also offer a community food systems program, which is a fee-for-service program that we work nationally with communities that are place-based to help design and develop their food systems. And then we have 3 different certifications that are available. The dots on the map are all of the states that currently have gone through the certifications. Yellow represents local food leader, and orange is community food systems. As I mentioned, those they have in-person workshops and then are followed by online modules for full certification. We are transitioning that to a fully virtual program due to COVID that'll launch in August and September. Mapping 101 is something that's always available online and teaches mapping for decision making. And I'll talk a little bit more about these in the next section. Okay, so our process overview for the core competency project, I just want to give you a sense of how this research was conducted. In October, we met with our large partner organization team, and we identified the ideas around core competencies and the main categories for ag professionals and extension staff. Based on those core competencies, we then identified existing curriculum through a survey. So there were 2 different surveys and 2 different in-person meetings. In the first survey, we sent that out nationally, and we asked for people's perspectives on very broad topics of what is needed as a core competency, and then do you have curriculum already that meets food systems practitioners? So super broad. Then in November, we got our project team back together in Denver, Colorado for this meeting. And based on the core competencies found in key categories, we wrote learning objectives for each of them and came up with sub-themes for each of those competencies, which I'll explain in a bit. From those, once that was developed, we were able to hone in on existing curriculum based on competency level. So a second survey went out where people could actually clarify which competencies then were met. At the end of this, or in December, then we were able to highlight gaps that we saw from that research in curriculum that was available for those competencies, as well as develop a matrix that people could highlight which competencies their curriculum met, as well as their different offerings of their curriculum. So from the research, and this is not in any particular order, we identified 9 categories. So community capacity, food systems, equity, government and policy, natural and built environment, economy and business development, evaluation, leadership, and then public health and wellness. We sent those out again through this second survey to understand if there was a hierarchy, what was most important, I guess. If you needed to identify foundational competencies, what would they be from those 9? So we had around 140 unique responses. It was also all open-ended. So I had the pleasure of using in vivo survey analysis tools to code all of that, which was really amazing to see everyone's perspectives on these different categories. We also asked if we were missing any categories, so had some discussion there. We had an initial 50 curriculum identified, and then also had an additional 60 or so that would like to be involved and have updates on the report. From the survey of the hierarchy of the categories, and I will read these off, I don't know, they're a little small. Food systems had the highest, like that should be the first, that foundation. And then equity, followed by community capacity and economy and business development. Evaluation, leadership, government and policy, environment, and public health and wellness were all still seen as critical, but did not rank as high as those first 4. So in November, when we came back together, we reviewed these different areas. We again created learning objectives. So what you see on this screen is how we were determining those learning objectives based on different levels. So we were particularly interested in knowledge change, behavior change, and then that expertise or that teaching level. So knowing, doing, and teaching was how we were differentiating between 3 different levels of learning that we wanted to write objectives for. Another colleague also shared the idea of this transition between your knowledge of going from unconscious incompetence to being unconscious competence. So going from that no knowledge at all to you are an expert and you know it without thinking about it. These are a few examples of some of the some of the pieces that were coming up in terms of what someone in a food systems might need to know. We probably had a couple hundred of these. So honing that into learning objectives became really important to determine the priorities. As well as, I should say too, defining the language and confirming the language. So we spent a lot of time, for example, talking about how do we describe farming and food systems, wild, subsistence, harvesting, what were those types of language, what was the language we wanted to use that was equitable and encompassing for what our intent was. So I'm gonna share a few of these outputs to detail more about what we were able to accomplish. You can see that this is 32 pages, so I will not go through all of them, but this is now publicly available and you can get online. So these are the learning objectives developed. How this report works is that we have our core competency of food systems. We have sub-competencies. In this case, we're looking at common language as a sub-competency need. And then we have additional descriptions of what that means for common language. And then you could choose which level of learning you're wanting to accomplish. These were written as examples, not as hard and fast. We also then thought it was necessary, because we work in food systems, to show how, in this case, maybe technical language around food systems also connects to community capacity and leadership. So in this case, to continue on the technical language, an example of a learning objective that if I offer a curriculum, I could consider which level I would fall in. Perhaps defining that technical language. What is a food system? What are food system sectors? Those types of things would be the level 1 knowledge change. Level 2 would be that through that curriculum, I'm also encouraging a behavior or a different aspect. So translating the food system's interests and opportunities into technical language for other collaborations. Level 3 is the teaching aspect. I now know enough, I'm able to teach or explain that to others, so there's common language now around food system. So briefly, I'll share for the food systems category, the different subs. So we also had supply and value chain, production and wild harvesting, so those types of practices that came up, processing and value-added agriculture, aggregation and distribution, market channels, consumption, food safety. And I would say here in food safety, there's a lot of discussion around where does food safety fall? Is it in food systems? Is that in governance and policy? How does that work because of those legal aspects? So most of these also overlap with governance and policy as well as health and wellness. Food systems assessment was another one that could be seen pretty easily in 2 different categories, both in food systems, but also in evaluation, because we're wanting to do assessments to be able to evaluate our current conditions, as an example. So once these learning objectives were developed, we were then able to share that out with curriculum providers as well as others to consider how they would want to teach or what would be foundational needs that they should consider as a local food coordinator. So now there is also a matrix available that is shown in 2 different ways. There is a curriculum table that, let's see, we're looking at some Colorado options here. So they have their curricula title, who the audience is for that curriculum, the method of delivery. So in this case, it's online, or excuse me, this one's in person. How many hours it takes to complete? We were seeing that question a lot. And as a participant in different programming, I want to know maybe what I'm signing up for. Also the fees that were associated. So again, as a participant or someone looking for curriculum, I can get on this table and actually compare prices and compare the route that it's offered. Also what you receive when you're done, and then the contact for those, for each of the curriculums. The second way that we're organizing these is by allowing the different curriculum providers to select the core competencies they're meeting. So each of the curriculum showed can use, again, those different levels of learning to state what they're meeting. So in this case, we just looked a little bit at technical knowledge. If that was something you're wanting to learn, I can go in and see that these are the curriculum that are offered, and then I can find that on the table before for contact. The last piece is the final report. And in this final report, this just has additional information on the full process, the next steps, and those aspects. So that is available for download as well now if you'd like to see more about the process. Overall, our suggestions, again, our being the large team, our suggestions for next steps to USDA was to create working groups or teams to review and edit those learning objectives by expertise. So those came from a large group of 30+ people. If we want to hone in more and provide more specific suggestions for those learning objectives, this would be an opportunity to do that. We also thought articulating additional types of learning that support each area of the knowledge, behavior, and teaching would be helpful. We do want that matrix that I just showed. We think creating an online portal that allows and highlights existing curriculum in a little more interactive way, enhancing the ability for curriculum providers that exist to place their curriculum online. But in addition, tools and networks and other best practices could be shared through that portal. One of the examples we looked at was the University of Vermont's food safety portal. They have some really great resources and a good platform there. Discussion around an accrediting body for certifications was also discussed quite a few times. We talked about the need or potential need for developing new curriculum. The whole intent was to first understand what we have to decide if we actually do need something new. And then obviously always continued networking and support is critical to this work. So I have one poll now to also offer based on I'm curious about your perspectives on which of the top 3 competencies are the most of interest to you. Just a few more minutes or seconds. All right. Can you see the results? Okay. So it looks like we're pretty similar. Health and wellness has a higher ranking than if we just look at our survey results from the top 4. But this is, yeah, thank you for sharing your perspectives. Hannah, do you have any additional comments based on that process for the core competency project?
I don't think so.
Okay. Are there any questions or clarifications needed from people on Zoom? Feel free to unmute if you do have comments.
Can you talk about the mapping 101 a little bit more?
Sure. I will actually hold off on that, Russ, until the Iowa State section, but yes, I can definitely talk about that.
Gotcha.
All right, I'll hand it over to you, Hannah.
All right, so for this part of the presentation, Courtney and I are both going to walk through the curriculums that we offer. So I'll walk through our courses and then go back, and then we'll open it up for questions. But feel free to drop any comments in the chat box during this section as well. So at NC State, we have 3 people who work on the courses, and I'm going to say we a lot, and I do want a lot of that credit to go towards my predecessor, Joanna Lalikas, who did a lot of work with the planning and getting these courses put together. She was also pretty instrumental in the initial national conversations about core competencies in the food systems curriculum. But right now at NC State, we have me, the local food program manager. Dara Bloom is a professor and our extension local food specialist. And we're very lucky to have Emma Brinkmeyer, who is our program assistant and Moodle guru, who does a lot of troubleshooting for us, which is very helpful. All right. So just to start with our private our goal is to increase the capacity of extension and other professionals, very well defined, to work with and educate growers, processors, distributors, buyers, and community members in the development and facilitation of high-performing local food systems. And this has been a pretty long project for our program. It began back in 2013. Over 40 stakeholders from across the food system and across the state were their input on what people need to know to be able to have conversations about food systems, functioning food systems in the state. And as work, she was with NAFSN, who was also a lead partner on this most recent project, to develop an initial set of core competencies. So all of that information was gathered, and an in-person graduate course was launched for North Virginia. It was mostly extension agents who took that course, and writing an in-person course for 3 states was very logistically challenging. So the courses were moved online in 2016. And between 2016 and 2019, we had a SARA PDP grant with NC State, NCANT, Clemson, and Virginia to add some region-specific content to the course. So we wrapped that up in 2019. And in 2020, we're continuing online course delivery during the courses right now. We happened to open our registration window right as people were getting work from home orders. So I haven't run the final numbers, but I have about 50 people from 7 different states in the courses right now. And then in the fall 2020, we are going to launch the course again as a graduate level course at NC State. We have a lot of extensions involved with that, and we're hoping to pilot some new curriculum on emerging food systems. Right. So when students take our courses, they're able to use a systems approach for their work. So being able to have conversations and do work across the entire food system, have a place-based awareness. We do have quite a bit of region-specific information in our courses, and also diverse networks and collaboration through community leadership. So we're doing professional development courses right now, and they are run asynchronously, meaning students can log in and work through them at their own pace. That means we're not there to necessarily enforce every learning objective. So we learn that we need a variety of learning activities to enforce our learning objectives. You are learning this as you move your programming online during COVID. So there are some examples of activities that we use throughout our courses. We have recorded lectures, voiceover presentations, readings, form posts for students are able to interact with each other. We have a virtual field trip. You can see in the top right. Active activities that you can see is that blue globalization box, podcasts that students can download, and then assessments that are just a piece of our evaluation process. So just to walk through our online courses, the first one is our Foundations of Local Food Systems Development. It's a very introductory level designed to provide a foundation for local systems practice. We cover a history of the U.S. food system, define key terminology, and do slide change. We have 3 modules. One is food systems. Then we have community engagement and food systems. And we have regulatory framework for food systems. I think this course take 15 hours to complete.
Hey, Hannah.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of feedback. Are other people on the call hearing that too, or maybe it's something on my end?
I'm experiencing that also.
Okay. I will try a different setup, but I'm not sure how much I can help that. Is this better?
It is now, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. The last little bit is just hard to hear completely.
Oh no, okay. Yeah, I think everything I said is pretty much on the slide, but is this audio working better?
Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea what the issue was. Yeah, so that's our foundations course. Did anybody have any questions since the audio cut out? I know a couple of people on this call have actually taken it. So if you want firsthand evaluation or feedback, they can offer that. All right, we'll move to the second course. So this one gets a little bit more technical, which is why we do have that first course as a prereq. This one's called Farm to Fork, Foundations of Local Food Supply and Value Chains. In this course, participants learn about the concept of a value chain. We explore what values drive supply chain configuration in different contexts, as well as how value chain development can support community and economic development. And again, we have 3 modules in this course. The first one is community and producer values and value chains, market channel assessment and selection, and communicating values and differentiating products, where we get into the value added piece. And this one's a little bit shorter. We expect it to take about 9 hours to complete, but it is a little bit more technical than the first one. It looks like Julia is in that class right now and is really enjoying it. I thought your name looked familiar, so I'm glad you're able to place that. And then I can touch on our last course, which is called The Bottom Line, Economic Realities and Other Considerations of Local Food Systems. And this one is also pretty technical. You just have to take the first course before you're allowed to take the last 2, but you don't necessarily have to do them in like the 1, 2, 3 order. So in this one, we learn about the legal structures for local food value chain businesses, the case for the triple bottom line approach for local food systems, and traditional and alternative financing methods. We also get into basic business planning and risk management and some keys to marketing local food products, including regional branding. And again, we expect this one to take about 9 hours to complete. And again, we have 3 modules: understanding data in the food and farming system, local food business planning basics, and the potential economic impact of local food on communities and local economies. All right, do you want to go to the next slide? Oh yeah, so then we went through the matrix and filled it out for our courses. I filled it out, I know for each course individually. I don't know if I went back in and did it for the whole certificate program. And we call it a certificate program. Participants do receive a certificate for each course that they complete.
I'm gonna try to find it really quick, sorry.
Yeah, I think we're
this
more,
one, right?
Yeah, so that's our Farm to Fork class, yeah. Oh yeah, so that middle one, number 20, is our introduction class. And the way the learning objectives were structured, a lot of the level that we're aiming for is that second level. So if you go look at the matrix, that's where we fit in quite a bit, because we want our students to be able to go and do this work. And that was the level 2 in this case. So yeah, you can see we hit quite a few of the different competencies. The text is really small on my screen, so I'm not even going to try to guess.
Yeah, for sure. I will show you this one. So let me find your North Carolina state. So here's your community food systems course, or your local food systems course, excuse me. And then this table also shows your competencies.
Yeah, so we hit quite a few. I don't think we hit all 9 categories with our courses, because we do take a deeper dive, especially in those last 2. But a lot of the foundational knowledge that professionals need to be able to do this work, we hit the food systems and community capacity and those categories.
Yeah.
And I do want to add one thing for implementing this curriculum through extension. With our goal of professionals being able to go out and do this work, we follow up with our course participants about 6 months after they complete the course and ask them what specifically they learned that they've implemented in their work. And we've gotten really good feedback. So through that evaluation process, we've been able to learn that we are hitting our primary objective. So if you want to learn more about the courses, we do have a website, localfoodcourses.org. We have some student testimonials and then more of a paragraph description of each of our courses. Right now, our plan is to open them each spring and then run it as a graduate course through NC State in the fall. And we're going to test out that schedule and see how it goes. But that's our plan.
All right. So I'm going to share about our 3 courses. We have, similar to NC State, have several different staff and faculty supporting the curriculum across the board. I do not have pretty pictures of all of their faces, so this is our infographic about the food system sectors and what we call our community asset areas, which were the community assets were derived from the community capitals framework. So our history in terms of where the curriculum started is we have the Regional Food Systems Working Group that still meets quarterly in Iowa. And this started with our Leopold Center back in 2003. So the Leopold Center of Sustainable Agriculture used to host the Regional Food Systems Working Group, started that, and it continues to this day through external partnerships as well as Iowa State support. In 2014, I worked with an organization called the Community Design Lab, and we received funding through the Leopold Center to develop the Agricultural Urbanism Toolkit, which basically looked at design for food systems, both in rural and urban areas. From that project, we started meeting with several other, community development practitioners, city planners, and had additional local foods interests beyond the typical like master gardeners and local food coordinators, farmers markets, those types of things that were in the working group, that REFSWIG. And so that led to a broader perspective of creating curriculum or just general professional development about what it meant to work in local foods. So we being our Iowa State Local Foods team, at that point created a program called Local Food Leader. And that started out as just an in-person 6-hour course, time to really encourage networking, but also talk about key areas of the food system like equity and facilitation skills, what different sectors of the food system existed, considering placemaking strategies. As that evolved, we were offering Local Food Leader once or twice a year as, again, this workshop in partnership with the Regional Food Systems Working Group. And we ended up having an opportunity to apply for funding through Agmark, and we received funds to develop two national certifications. This led to the development of both Local Food Leader as a beginning practitioner curriculum, as well as a community food system certification, which teaches more of our ag urbanism process of design and development of food systems. Additionally, what we learned through that is we were using mapping quite frequently as a design strategy, as an assessment strategy to understand food systems. So we created a third curriculum of Mapping 101 for food systems practitioners. In 2018 to 2019, we launched our program in 14 different states. We got to go to NC State to host our first one with collaboration with Kathleen Liang as well as Joanna Lilakis. That was a really great learning opportunity. And then we had more learning from those additional 13 states. All throughout the process, we updated our binders, we updated the way we presented information in those in-person workshops, and also created more space for collaboration of presenting local knowledge about their food systems. I don't need to go to Alaska and teach people what's going on in Alaska food systems. That's not my job. But instead, we would partner with those experts, and then we would teach more of those foundational practices. Now, like many of you, we are looking at how on earth do we respond to COVID-19? And so we will be updating our curriculum throughout this summer based on our pilot feedback, as well as changing it to an all virtual option. So I should share too, this is a table of our different curriculum. Ours is offered a little bit differently. So we have, again, a workshop followed by online modules for full certification. Once people receive full certification, they can become a trainer, and then there's train the trainer opportunities. So we have about 27 trainers of local food leader in 10 different states right now that can offer the workshop. And so those are opportunities. We haven't hosted a community food systems train the trainer yet, but the hope is that we're building local capacity, and we're more process oriented, I would say, in our certifications versus teaching very specific practices. So that's where we're headed. In this case, this is a quick overview. Ours are also pretty dense in terms of the time allocated for them. So local food leader does have about a one-day workshop. It's about 7 hours. So, and then after you complete the workshop, there's about 40 hours of online curriculum. We found out that's a lot. And so we are minimizing the amount of required activities and time and having more suggested options. One of the things we're changing is that in our COVID response, we will have bi-weekly and monthly check-ins throughout the 4-month period to keep people on track for finishing the modules. And there will be more bounce back in terms of that space and learning in a couple different ways. For community food systems, that's an 80-hour course. That's a pretty intensive course as well. Again, this goes through a process. So people are learning about facilitation, they're learning about design thinking, a community food systems process, creating a community food systems assessment. So there's also several different products and outputs that participants create throughout the curriculum, all of which are submitted and graded. And then in community food systems, there's observation requirements and those types of things too that we've been doing via Zoom. Mapping 101 is both as a standalone course as well as embedded in community food systems for those that would like to have a full certification. This one's more around 10 to 12 hours. It teaches QGIS, which is a free platform for using mapping. It goes through tutorials of QGIS, and then so you go through tutorials, you build a specific map, we grade that, and then you create your own map. So the goal is that you think about your place-based food system, your farm, your business, and you create a map that responds to something you're questioning. And we would work through that process with participants. And that one is all online. Similar to NC State, we have several different learning activities as well. In the workshop sessions, we're using a lot of like breakout rooms. We have people break out into sector groups, or they meet as like people interested in production or people interested in processing or distribution, and then talk about, in that case, like how does equity impact, or how does that look in the production system, or what does it mean for the economy when these things happen in distribution. So we have specific breakouts for those types of things. Once you get online, there's also recorded presentations and closed captioning, several different readings and interactive discussions. We also use pre and post tests as well as pre and post evaluations. The tests are more so we can very easily just see the knowledge change, and the pre and post evaluations are more about perceptions of what has changed. Was this helpful? Kind of like what Hannah said about like the 6-month mark, like how are you implementing anything because of this curriculum? That's how we use our evaluation. I noticed when I was trying to show Hannah's curriculum that going through this table is a little messy, so I'm just gonna spare you and mention that you can get on the curriculum matrix and see which objectives LFL, CFS, and Mapping 101 meet. The other thing we did when filling this out is we actually have different levels of certification for community food systems. And so those are all broken out. We learned pretty quickly too that not many people want to do all of the things. And so we have, like, for example, a facilitator certification. So if you're interested in connections and facilitating dialogue and understanding your community, that's a really great spot. If you're interested more in like the data and research and assessments, we have an assessor certification. So you would go through just those modules. So that's something we switched up pretty quickly after going through our pilot. Are there any questions for either of us regarding curriculum, whether it's about ours specifically, or if you're creating curriculum and you have something you want to bring up? Would love to hear your thoughts.
This is Hannah. I'm curious about the main audiences that you're noticing of who is taking those classes, and then from the feedback of what people are working on, what types of projects are happening.
Yeah, great question. Hannah, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I know for at least this time that we're running the courses, we have, I would say the majority of extension folks. Yeah, I would say mostly extension, so, and like evenly split, I think, between campus and county. And then we also we actually have a couple farmers this time taking our courses, and then some people from food policy councils. We had a pot of money that we were able to give scholarships to family and consumer science high school teachers. So we have a number of them going through the courses this time. Oh man, we have some people from nonprofits. I think we even have a couple like local government officials. We have one mayor of a small town in Virginia, I think, was going through, I think, our foundations course that I'm pretty excited about. And
That's super cool.
Yeah, yeah, I want to try to figure out if we can market to that audience a little bit more. So I think those are the major groups that we have people taking the course, at least this time around. And then the type of projects, I think, vary quite a bit. I think the major themes, I'm actually going to be diving into this data next week. So this is just remembering from a brief skim. The thing people talk about the most is being able to build relationships across the food system. So like producers being able to talk to local government officials to develop like farmers markets or something like that was definitely a major theme. Have to think a little bit more. I think the types of projects are very place-based specific. We do have quite a few people from rural areas, quite a few urban areas. So different goals and different communities. I don't know if that was a very good answer. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say for ours, we have a pretty similar group. I would add public health, whether it's like county public health or different types of organizations like that have been very involved. Similar like city planners, county planners, economic development. We tend to get also master gardeners and different like just food advocates in our local food leader, and then more of the like planner, local food coordinators, in those groups that are the doers, for lack of a better word, that want a process to take communities through, have been more in our community food systems program. The other thing that and I probably said that backward, our doers are more in LFL and they're wanting language, and the people that are facilitating processes are the ones that are going through the CFS. So I apologize about that. We also, similar to Hannah, I think when we were doing our in-person workshops, the main outcome of those was the increased networking, the increased collaborations, knowledge change, like using different languages, being aware of what's going on were the things we were seeing most in terms of changes. And then in the community food systems certification, we help groups create coalition, vision, mission, and core values in common language about how they want to work together, as well as determining priority projects. And so they walk away from the workshop with those identified as potentials. And so we have heard feedback that, you know, they adopted that language, or they're moving forward with one of the priority areas that was developed. I'm curious if that will remain the same once we go virtual, because my assumption is that through the virtual only program, we're going to have people from all over the nation joining in on those conversations versus 20 to 40 people from a locale or state in the same space. So it'll be interesting to see what shifts, I guess.
Thank you. That's super interesting to hear about.
Any other questions or comments? Okey-doke. So we wanted to just hold some space too for next steps. I know we mentioned some of our next steps for competencies. And let me see here, I keep trying to see your faces while also reading my screen. We were curious if you have any immediate needs, or whether that's in curriculum or immediate needs for collaboration and thinking together, what is on the top of your mind right now with food systems in our nation, in your states?
So the reason we're asking this is that the work that we've highlighted today, we are taking to a community of practice that's housed under NAPSID. And we are going to figure out the next action steps in this process. So we're interested in hearing about the most immediate needs, so we can maybe tighten up those action steps a little bit and actually get more products out. So.
Well, I'll just speak up a little bit. Rex Nelson from University of Nebraska Extension. Hello, Courtney.
Hi.
We're a state that's kind of late to the party, didn't have a highly developed food systems team, and so we just found the training through Iowa State really helpful. We have brought several partners on board, and to start with common language and common thinking, it was just to help us build a good foundation for our foods team to move forward.
Thanks, Rex. Rex being on the call reminds me too, I think the other thing that's really unique about some of the different practices, and NC State, I believe, does this well, is that figuring out the best platform to have curriculum on too, I think is important. I know with Nebraska, they were actually looking at LF, Local Food Leader, becoming a graduate course, something more formal. And so we decided at Iowa State to not do that, which would be really interesting to trial out. But Hannah, you have those types of courses too, correct?
Yeah, so we are, so when the courses were first developing, they were launched as graduate courses across 3 states, targeting extension agents mostly. But we are repackaging our courses into a single graduate course. I think the title is like Introductions to Local Food Systems Development. And we are gonna launch that online this fall. Yeah, so as we mentioned, this is part of an ongoing conversation that's been going on for several years now. So I mentioned the community of practice that's housed under NAFSN. We are going to pull this group together maybe sometime this summer or early fall at the latest. So if you're interested in continuing to talk about these core competencies and learning objectives, feel free to shoot me an email. If you need that, I can drop it in the chat box before we wrap up here. And I will make sure that you get added to that list. And then there's also some ways to engage with the lead partners from this project. E-Extension has the community, local and regional food systems community of practice that has lots of resources and webinars. You can like register your email with that, get notifications from them. And the Wallace Center also has Food Systems Leadership Network, which is a way to connect with folks from across the country. And then Courtney is going to continue housing this matrix project at Iowa State. So if you want to add your curriculum to that, or if you need some help navigating the matrix, she's your person to reach out to. And if there aren't any other questions, oh, our emails are here. And before you all head out, I'm going to drop an evaluation into the chat box. Oh, I accidentally shared that privately. Sorry. All right, there you go. Yeah, if there aren't any questions or anything else you want to discuss, that is all that we have to share with you today.
I will leave this slide up too that has Hannah and my contact information on it. And yeah, you can use the chat box for the survey or click the screen. We really appreciate your time today. So thank you for joining us, and we'll stay on for a little bit if anyone wants to chat.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye all.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Hannah and Courtney. This is Beth from the University of Maine. I have a question for you. We have a School of Food and Agriculture with an interesting mix of folks. We have soil scientists, a sustainable ag program, very small program, food science, nutrition. I believe animal vet sciences, if I didn't mention that. So we're looking at possibly starting a food systems for your degree program. Do you have any sorts of suggestions on where to start as far as resources?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, Beth, I wonder if it would be easy to schedule a phone call or something and
Sure.
hear about where you're at. And
We're just at like a beginning stages. We actually submitted in because of the COVID, they had this internal proposal and we kind of came together as a school and sort of like this Define Tomorrow proposal. So we're coming up with some ideas, right? So we're at the basic beginning stages. So any thoughts that you might have, but yeah, be happy to maybe connect with some other colleagues that are kind of probably putting this curricula together more than myself. So maybe reaching out to them and partnering with you guys to get some thoughts would be great.
Absolutely. I think just some like questions to consider is obviously you've been thinking about like what all you want to be teaching in that class, but maybe even getting onto the learning objectives, that matrix, and also just thinking about core competencies if you're wanting to cover everything or wanting to be really specific. And then I think there are some, I'll speak for myself, and Hannah, please chime in. I mean, there are some existing curriculum that you may be able to adopt certain things rather than recreating if that's of interest.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things we learned traveling about was why recreate something if it already exists? And
exactly.
Get better. So, yeah.
We are aware of UVM's program, and I think we have some folks, especially in sustainable ag, that know people there that have talked to them about their program. So we're aware of some other similar programs out there. But it was great to hear you guys' presentation and some other ideas and resources for us.
Thanks for joining.
Yes, thank
Give
you.
a plug for the Vermont program, but another program that might be worth reaching out to. It's a graduate level program. It's where I got my master's, and Courtney's there now. The graduate program in sustainable agriculture at Iowa State is very interdisciplinary.
Okay, yeah.
And they went through a big process to pull that program together.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so that would be a really good website to check out. And I mean, I really enjoyed the program, so definitely giving a plug for it.
Excellent. No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have your contact information, so maybe we'll set up a time to chat later on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's an exciting project.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of different moving parts to it. But like you said, having producers, processors involved. We have 3 food science specialists, one myself, that an extension that can be involved as well. So it can be a pretty exciting program, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Have a good day, guys.
You too.
Thank you.
This is Melissa. Are you still there?
Yeah. Yep.
So you mentioned a lot of resources that I was interested in. Are you going to be sharing something with participants, or should I just ask right now, like, how do I reference the content once it does go online? Where the
Really
podcast
good questions. Thanks for asking. Yes, so we are recording this presentation. I need to find out if we are able to just share with the participants that we're on, or if NACDEP wants it on their website solely. So that's something we need to figure out. So I'm also happy to like send you a PDF of the presentation, Melissa, if that would be helpful, and we could post that pretty soon, I would imagine. And Hannah and I could have that on our websites too.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
What is your email, Melissa? Or could you type it in?
Yeah, I'll type it in the chat.
Got your hands full, but it's
Thanks.